coming towards the second effect, that is a burden on the economical growth of a country. The HIV poses a great threat to the economical growth of a country because it mostly affects the adults at the prime of their birth years. So the poverty, the burden on the economical growth, and the burden on the development of a country, it increases. Then coming towards the third point, there is impact on the education. It's a renowned statement of UNESCO that HIV/AIDS is a major global constraint to the provision of good quality education because the slowly progressing disease of HIV, it affects the ability of the teachers to teach, learners to learn, and managers to manage the effective schooling system. And also then coming towards the fourth point, it's also very important, that is the psychiatric behavior, the psychiatric changes that comes in an infected patient. There is increase because of the stigma and socially rejected type of behavior. There is increased suicidal tendency in him, and also sometimes there is increased homicidal tendency. He tries to kill the person from where he got the infection, and sometimes he develops a revengeful type of behavior. He thinks, if I have the disease, why the other people around me are healthy? Why the other people around me are healthy? So he tries, he stated to be important. People think that my colleagues have already described it. The people think that AIDS spread, living outdoors, etc. Such type of things. After discussing all these social issues, it's very important to counsel an AIDS patient. Okay, coming towards the counseling, why counseling should be done? Number one is to prevent new infections. And number two, to improve the quality of life of a patient already infected with HIV. And number three, to reduce the stigma and discrimination. And the second question arises: who needs to be counseled? It's not only the patient infected with HIV who needs to be counseled, also the family, even the whole general public, and especially the person who thinks that they are not at risk of having HIV, they need to be counseled. Then the third question is, what the things a person should know? Number one, he needs to know how, initially infected patient, he needs to know how to live positively. Number two, how to avoid coming into contact a viral strain that is different from he's having already. And number three, that he cannot become infected from things such as sharing of the towels, toilets, household type things. Okay? Then, how the counseling is done. It's not done at an individual level, it's not done in the classroom, it's basically the media should be involved, the international or the national organizations, it should be on a high level. The counseling of the AIDS should be on a high level, media should be involved actively in it. And coming towards the government, what's the role of the government that he can do for the AIDS patient? It's provision of 4 fees and 1 care. Now what are these 4 fees and 1 care? Coming towards the 4 fees. Number one is the free provision of antiretroviral drugs, especially to the patients who are living in the rural areas or who are suffering from some sort of financial difficulties. Then number two is the free voluntary counseling and testing, free provision of drugs to the pregnant mothers, and also free provision of testing to the newborn babies. Then number three is the free schooling of the children of patients infected with HIV/AIDS as they are thrown off their job. And number fifth point, that is 1 care. What's that 1 care? It's basically the care and economic assistance to families of the people living with HIV/AIDS. And besides these media organizations and the government part, to do the counseling, the community will also be involved for the welfare program. And at the government level, there should also be some sort of disability allowances for the people and the families infected with HIV, and also there should be some sort of child and orphan support system. And some countries, the one last thing, some countries have some sort of policies and rules that interfere with the accessibility and effectiveness of HIV-related measures. For example, as the provision of condoms is prohibited to the prisoners. So, in some countries, according to the law, it's inhibited. So, the people who are living in the prison, so they can get this HIV through unsafe sex. So, the government should encourage this thing that at this level, it should be free, the condom should be available to them. And also, some laws criminalize the consensual sex between men and men, and the needed access for the prisoners, it should also be free. 345. Alright.
Okay, now we'll just wrap up the whole thing and just see how the all the data links up with the scenario. Now in the scenario we had one of the signs and symptoms was hemoptysis, and he is non-smoker, cough, weight loss, anorexic, raised temperature, reduced WBC count, and he had a blood transfusion. So, and he was they tested HIV positive. So Bilal told us that he would be suffering from pneumocystis caronae. So anybody else thinks that there is any other opportunistic infection that he would be suffering from?
Can be tuberculosis.
Okay. And like how would we like find? Of course we could find it out on the lab diagnosis, but based on the CD4 counts. Then there are more chances of pneumocystis caronae. Okay. Because in tuberculosis, one of the major things is the weight loss and the anorexia, and the night sweats are there, and the raised temperature. The temperature is also there.
But the most common opportunistic infection in the patients suffering from AIDS is from pneumocystis.
You have done that?
70%. Yes, 70% of people
Okay.
suffering from AIDS in America.
Regardless of the CD4 count.
Regardless of the age, regardless of the symptoms.
But like,
Okay.
and what do you do in Amsterdam?
Tuberculosis are from weight loss.
It's 37. Okay, education.
Okay. Okay. So all of us agree on pneumocystis caronae.
Yeah.
Okay. Majority of us agree. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now we come to the part where we were asked that how would we approach the patient in light of the disease pathophysiology. Okay, I think Ijaz explained the pathogenesis, but how would we tell the patient that what would this cause? So let's just say that we have to tell the patient that he would be suffering from some more symptoms, like Sana told us there would be pain or swelling of his lymph nodes as well, and we could tell him that he might be suffering from diarrhea and an unexplained weight loss later on, and these are some of the symptoms and some of the complications. He might be suffering from some other diseases after this, and but we should counsel him that he should not worry about this, because we would be giving him some prophylactic treatment for those other opportunistic diseases. Then regarding the treatment, what counseling should be done to the patient is that like Umar told us, that zidovudine, that is hepatotoxic, and it can cause other symptoms like those nausea, vomiting, and other symptoms that are caused. So we should inform him as well that these drugs might have some side effects, so he should not discontinue the drugs just because of those side effects. And then we have to also tell him that he should stick to the regime of the treatment very strictly. He should adhere to it. And then what about his the fact that he has a wife and he has a 1-year-old baby? So I think we should tell him that he should get his wife tested immediately and his child also tested. If they are negative, then he should always have protected sex with the wife and never have unprotected sex. And if in case she is positive, then of course both of them should use some precautions in dealing with the other people. We should tell him definitely not to isolate himself, not to cut himself from the society. He should take part in the daily matters of the like his lifestyle used to be, but he should be careful in the fact that he should not share syringes, or he should not donate blood, or anything that can transmit. We have to educate him about these factors.